My goodness, the last couple of months, an assassination attempt, the head of the Secret Service steps down, the president stands down from running for a second term, a new candidate seamlessly takes over. Is this the most unprecedented election in American history?
Every election, Steve, feels like the most unprecedented election in American history. I was watching a documentary about 1968 over the weekend, and that seemed pretty unprecedented at the time. And even looking back, it was pretty extraordinary. So obviously, we have a set of circumstances here that are quite extraordinary. We have an incumbent president who stepped down from running for re-election, a former president turned GOP nominee that was shot, albeit just kind of grazed on the ear, thankfully. Survived that, but still quite extraordinary. And a vice president who stepped up and in no time at all has really garnered enormous support and enthusiasm from her party. All that is to say that it is definitely one that we are going to remember. And certainly we are 56 days from election day, but who's counting? We're really going to see how it goes. There's something that we talk about here in Washington, the October surprise. We're all holding our breath for everything that's happened this year. If there's still an October surprise to come, God help us all. But it's definitely been a pretty extraordinary year.
Andrew, we've already had the July surprise, the August surprise. I'm sure there's going to be a September surprise. Can you recall an election in your lifetime with these kinds of circumstances?
None, and I don't think any in American history, partly because of the singular figure of Trump. You've never had a president who's not only a career criminal, but a convicted criminal candidate, I should say, who's been a convicted criminal, a serial fraud artist, a serial abuser of women, essentially a malignant narcissist who's attempted to bring down the system of government, who's attempted to undermine the system of law.
Get off the fence and tell me what you really think.
All those qualities of him in particular. And then, of course, the stakes in this election, I think, are certainly since Lincoln, perhaps, I think are the largest. That I think it is very clear that if Trump is reelected, the democratic system of government and the rule of law in America will be under serious threat.
You agree with that, Kim?
Absolutely. This is an unprecedented election because of the stakes involved. And the stakes aren't only, as Andrew has said, in the domestic politics of the United States, but also in foreign policy, too. If Trump is elected in November, the impact on the global system is going to be just immense. And so from that point of view, it's absolutely unprecedented.
Vivian, based on what you have seen since the new players were put in place, meaning Harris and Walz, and based on your understanding of what you expect to see over the next 56 days, do you think this election is going to be decided on policy differences among the candidates or more on all-out character attacks, which are also happening in abundance?
There definitely are people out there who do want to hear about policy, and at the end of the day, those are the issues that are going to really impact, anyone's view on either candidate. It's really the burden is on Harris at this point to really establish herself, to help the American people understand what she stands for. Is she a continuation of Biden? Does she break with him on certain policies? And if so, what? Also, something that we are going to be hearing a lot about on Tuesday night at the debate is how she switched her position on certain key issues in this election, particularly fracking, which is huge in places like Pennsylvania, a critical swing state, and on Medicare for All, where she has flip-flopped on that as well. We saw a CNN interview a couple of weeks ago where she said that her values haven't changed, but she really hadn't explained fully how that evolution took place. And so a lot of people really anxious to hear about that. But ultimately, a lot of this is about personality. There are very few Americans who don't have a pre-established view of Donald Trump at this point. They either love him or hate him. They might vote for him, but not really care for his rhetoric. Everybody has an opinion about Donald Trump here in the United States and probably around the world. So, for him, it's really about just not saying anything to blow it with key demographics that he needs, most specifically women, suburban white women especially. And that's where the Democrats start pushing the issue of abortion and reproductive rights in general, a very contentious issue where they want to highlight him as someone who's going to essentially rob them of those rights. And so that's when the issues come in. And Harris, especially on Tuesday night, is going to be looking to poke the bear a little bit on some of those issues so that she can provoke some sort of erratic response from him, where you could kind of highlight these policy differences.
All right, let's pursue that. Andrew, let's get away from the mudslinging for a second and just look at the policy differences. Which are those that you believe are the most germane that could result in the win or loss either way?
Well, we have to understand, first of all, how few voters will actually decide this election, right? Comes down to 7 swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. And it'll be a small number of voters within those states. What is striking about this campaign is how few people are actually changing their minds. You look at the conventions. Typically, conventions in the past, if you got a really good convention, you could get a bump of 5, 6, 7 points in the polls. In recent elections, it's been more like 1 or 2%. This election doesn't seem like there was any bump at all. So there's so many people who are so decided. So the small number of people who can actually be persuaded to change their minds on this, who are undecided between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, are a very strange beast. Maybe some of them can be turned on the issues, things like abortion, things like immigration, things like inflation, things like foreign policy. Maybe. I think a lot of it's going to come down to more things like, oh, I'm tired of this. This is boring. Let's see what else is on. You can see them attempting in their rhetoric, the Democrats in particular, trying to figure out what's the psychographic profile of somebody who could actually be undecided between these two candidates. So we can have all these discussions about the issues, and they matter to some voters somewhere. I don't think they're going to be decisive, frankly.
Let's put up this background here, shall we? This is Do Youth Sports Break the Bank? We're calling this. A recent report by Solutions Research Group consultants shared that 58% of parents interviewed, 58%, describe facing financial issues trying to keep their children enrolled in sports. The Jumpstart State of Play Youth Report has similar findings. 47% of children surveyed that do not play sports often say their reasoning for lack of participation is because sports are just too expensive. Okay, Marco, start us off. What do you want to tell us more about these findings?
Well, a couple of things. So great that we know that 1 in 2, or approximately 1 in 2, can no longer afford the cost of sport for their kids. It's the rate at which that has increased since pre-pandemic levels that is really startling. Based on our data, we knew that about 1 in every 3 families leading into 2020 couldn't afford the cost of sport. So to see that escalation in the lack of affordability is really what should be concerning. The other thing that we need to keep in mind, though, is that this is true. This cost as a barrier to participation is true regardless of where you are in the world. You can survey kids in the US, you can survey families in Europe, you can survey families in Australia. No matter where you survey, the number one barrier to participation is always going to be cost. Yet, many jurisdictions have found a way to overcome that. We don't have a systemic solution here in Canada, and given the urgency with which now families are saying they can't afford the cost of sport and play when their kids need it most, we should start to be thinking about solutions that are systemic.
And we shall get to some ideas as we continue our conversation. Are these, you're surrounded by people who are athletic and young people, all the time, right? At YMCAs everywhere. So are these numbers representative of what you see in your experience?
Yeah, I think to support what Marco just said, we see it every day. Where at the YMCA, we have about 90,000 roughly individuals and families across the GTA, from Oshawa to Mississauga. And 1 in 5 utilize the YMCA's financial assistance program. And the majority of those happen to be the kids and the youth. And definitely the findings from the Canadian Tire Jumpstart report are seen every day in our centers. And one of the things that we've noticed is that since the pandemic, there has been, I wouldn't say a less of a desire, but that was a major disruption to kids' rhythm of participation. And it's a definite challenge that we're facing to try to recruit kids back and recruit youth back into our programs. And that's our focus at the YMCA, which is to try to continue to support them through our own financial assistance program, but also partnering with organizations like Canadian Tire Jumpstart. They've been a great support to us as well.
Well, here's where I get a little needlessly provocative with the former All-Star over here on my left. I can imagine there are people watching this or listening to this who will think to themselves, Bruce Kidd was one of the great runners of this country's history. What's the barrier to participation if you just want to get out and run around in the streets? What's the barrier to participation if you just grab a soccer ball and go to the park, or grab a football and go to the park? How can we have a financial barrier to participation in sports, which you would think would be fairly easy to do?
Well, one explanation or contributing factor is the immiseration of public institutions like physical education and school sports in our public schools. I mean, I went to the Olympics on the basis of public programs. My friend and colleague Bill Crothers, after whom a school is named in York region, went to the Olympics on the basis of public programs. But public programs can no longer do that. The demands for sport development are much greater, and schools and municipalities haven't been able to keep up. If you read the surveys of People for Education, you'll see that over the period that my colleagues have talked about, user fees for participation in sport have gone up and up and up. And really only parents in the rich neighborhoods can now afford the cost of a team.
But that presupposes that the school is the sort of focal point of all athletic activity, and anybody...
But it's the entry,
okay,
and it should be the basis. And I would say all of our public commitments as a country talk about the school and the municipality as the basic entry for sport. The other measure that I want to introduce, Steve, is the class background of our top athletes. Whether it's in pro sports like the NHL or whether it's in the Olympic team, the class background is much higher than it was in my era. When I grew up, the best hockey players were from small rural
Timmins,
towns.
Kirkland Lake, yes, for sure.
Well, my colleague Rick Bruno at Simon Fraser has written a now famous paper entitled "Gordie Howe Would Never Make It to the NHL Today." Why? Because his parents could not afford the costs of the registration fees, the skates, the travel time, the summer skill camps, and so on. So if you compared the class background of the NHL in 1960 and today, you'd see a vast difference.
Is that what you see as well?
We see it clearly every single day, and part of that has to do with the fact that we've pseudo-commercialized youth sports throughout North America predominantly. And rather than adhere to the principles of positive youth development, where kids shouldn't really be competing before the age of 13, they shouldn't be specializing in one sport, they should be sampling as many as possible. What we have is organizations capitalizing on the interest and the demand, predominantly coming from parents, and forcing kids to specialize in very specific sports throughout 12 months of the year.
The show is called Old Enough. Shall we have a look at how he did?
Oh,
Sheldon,
absolutely.
if you would, let's roll the clip.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Are you so tired?
Only the blood I have to run in back to the store to get. I got the fish, I got the cheese,
Okay.
and I got the grapes. Both colors.
Okay, so you're gonna go back in?
Yeah, they get the.
What kind of bread?
What?
What kind of bread?
The long bread.
Yeah, how many?
3.
We only need 2, but 3 is good.
No, close.
Come on, buddy.
You are so scared. It's so funny.
No,
Okay.
it isn't legit.
Alex,
Paranoia. Oof.
what can kids learn from this kind of experience?
You know, what kids learn from this is that they can do it. And so when parents believe that their child can do it, the child learns that he can do it. But conversely, when you don't give him this opportunity, your expectation is that he can't do it. And that's what he internalizes. The way you see your child is how he sees himself. And so you don't want him to see him as being capable of something he can't do.
Right.
To go down to do this all by himself without all that support wouldn't be good for a 4-year-old. But to know that he can and to believe that he can changes his sense of himself. He sees himself as competent.
Nikki, I mean, there are several episodes obviously in this series, and in some of the other episodes, there are 3-year-olds being sent by themselves to go run errands, go to the dry cleaner, get the hem of Dad's pants fixed. I mean, some of the details, and a 1-inch hem, and the kid got it all right. Like, the kid nailed it. But what do you think about the idea of a 3-year-old being sent out on errands to begin with?
I think that those 3-year-olds, I think you have to know who your child is. And I think that's a really important part. Not all 3-year-olds or even 5-year-olds will be able to do that. And I think that it's about giving challenges inside. So what I thought was really great about the show is in those 3-year-old episodes, they actually showed the children organizing the house, doing little chores. So the parents knew that the child was capable of taking on a little bit of risk or responsibility. So they weren't out in the wild on their own. And I think it's important to think about adversity, how your child manages with stress, and how, because we don't want to develop resilience, we don't want to give so much that they crumble. We want to give enough that they know that they can be successful. And I think the important part that we saw in all of the episodes is love. And I mean love as the science of love, as what it truly is, of having the child feel seen and heard and valued, know that they have a safe space to land, and know that they are trusted. When you know that you're trusted and you can come back and you can make mistakes and you can fail and take risks, you can do amazing things. And I think that's what we were able to see in the show that I was really impressed with, regardless of age. 3, I would be uncomfortable with.
Emile, how do you react to what you saw?
I think it's great. I have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 7 months. And one of the things that I'm constantly thinking about, just like you two, is how can I help them gain independence, gain confidence while living in a city where there are risks, there are real dangers. Car is my biggest fear. And give them the sense that they can accomplish things that are a little bit scary and a little bit hard. And it's so heartwarming and so wonderful and so funny. And I love that his instinct was to get 3 baguettes, because that is what a good host does. Of course. And it really makes me want to give my kids a lot more independence myself.
Alex, could a parent who watched these episodes be forgiven for thinking, this is nuts? There's no way a 3-year-old should be crossing busy lanes of traffic, even with a crossing guard, even with camera crews watching, on his own.
Yeah, they'd be right to think it's nuts without all of that support, because you wouldn't want to just send your 3-year-old out to the dry cleaner without that support. That would be not wise, especially with a busy street. But actually, yeah, with all that support, I think lots of parents might look at that and say that's crazy. And that's part of our culture right now. We are too often underestimating children's emotional competencies. They're capable of a lot more than we're aware of. We've become helicopter parents, and part of that is underestimating what kids can actually take on. And as we're just saying, when we underestimate them, they come down to that level. What we need to do is work in what they call the proximal zone of development, to see that what's just becoming capable, they're just becoming capable of, and we operate in that zone. And so that sometimes they try and fail, but it won't be catastrophic. It might be a bit painful, but we believe in them, and when we believe them in that way, up they come each time. And we're a generation of parents who tend to do the opposite.
Yeah. Let me go back to the parents here. What do you think your son gained from this experience?
Oh my gosh, the echoes of that day we hear every single day. He has developed a sense of self and confidence from that one experience, which is kind of shocking. But he refers to that day of shopping so many times throughout his interactions with other people at school. Something as simple as our older daughter, it took her a long time to be able to walk ahead of us to go to school. Well, Simon right now, because he had that experience, he is able to go right with her, hand in hand, and he feels that we are there for him, but he is strong enough to do it on his own.
Jennifer, I wanted to start with you. Why do we go to university in the first place?
An excellent question. I think there's a couple different reasons for students attending university. Some professions definitely demand that university education. There's those professional schools like Teachers College, nursing, engineering, where you have to have that accredited degree. And there are many others like that in order to pursue that employment later. But other students, for those other subjects, like in the sciences, social sciences, humanities, in that case there, students are going there to achieve that higher education. Let's say they're going there to expand their thinking. They're going there because they are very interested in that subject. They want to engage in that subject, learn more about it. But in the midst of doing so, they're also learning all the important intangible skills that you're gaining in university, that critical thinking, problem solving, the ability to adapt to different changes, communicate. So that's ultimately what they're getting out of the end. They're going to learn how to think, and grow from there. And also probably because they want to be a biologist, or they love history, or they want to be in English. There are many reasons for students to attend, but many values in attending.
Eileen, I don't want to put you on the spot because you're representing a college, but there seems to be a little bit of a hierarchy between going to college and university. Is one better than the other?
Well, certainly they both have value, and it really is dependent upon what the individual wants to do in terms of their education and their profession. So as an example, when we think about a college education, many people think of a college education as it was in the 1960s or the 70s. The colleges in Ontario have really evolved, and we know specifically in the GTA in Toronto, the colleges refer to themselves as polytechnics, right? Which provides an opportunity for an individual to start in a certificate program, move through in pathways to a diploma, to a degree, and now they have the opportunity soon to be able to do postgraduate certificates and graduate degrees in applied masters. So certainly when we think about the value of education and we think about the value of a college education, students often pursue that because they know exactly what they want to do in their profession, and they're coming to get hands-on practical skills that get them job ready, provide them with a professional network and a social network so that they're ready to practice as soon as they graduate.
Sabrina, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but Alex, university isn't for everyone, and you say that students have become more utilitarian now. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think there's been a broad turn maybe in the last 15, 16 years or so, where students, as Jennifer said, there's lots of reasons people go to university. I think the weighting in students' mind about short-term returns seems a little bit heavier in their decision-making than it was, say 20 years ago. You do see that in surveys of students and why they want to go. And you certainly see it, I think, because young graduates young students are making more than they used to. Actually, it's what you can earn while you're a student has actually gone up quite a bit. So their opportunity cost of going to school has been a little bit higher. And so they're a little bit more careful with how they spend their time, and they want to make sure they're doing it in a way that is remunerative.
Well, I mean, when I went to university 20 years now, I'm seeing more friends of mine who are like content creators making way more money than I am. And I think the value of a journalism degree doesn't carry the same weight as it did maybe 20 years ago. And so you say we're in a skills economy, and that doesn't mean it's an education economy. What do you mean by that?
When people say they want skills, right? When employers say they want skills, governments often react and institutions often react as if what they need are graduates. But graduates have knowledge. They've sat through some classes. They don't have as the experience. And I think that's really what people want. So when people say, gosh, we have this skills problem in plumbing, or we have this skills problem in digital marketing, they don't mean let's go get more students in. What they mean is I want people who have a degree plus 5 years of experience, or a diploma plus 5 years of experience. So it's actually, they're talking about training problems that happened a long time in the past. So I think for a lot of institutions and for a lot of governments, the onus or the priority for the last few years has been to try to get students to have more experience while they're in their studies, what they call work-integrated learning. And I think colleges have always had a step on universities in that. That's always been their stock in trade. But I think you see more and more programs in institutions right across the board that are trying to deliver those kinds of opportunities to students while they study.
And rules around internships have changed in the last few years. And you see a lot of discourse online, the frustration that young grads have. They finish school, they apply for a job, but that job insists on like 3 or 4 years of experience. Sabrina, you believe that we've lost track of what university is really meant for. Why do you say that?
Well, I graduated back in 2010, which is the period that's been referenced by a couple of the other answers. And during that era, especially if you grew up in a city or the suburbs, the answer after high school was you were expected to go to university, simply because university was what you did. And in some cases, that made sense for people's educational goals and careers, but in a lot of cases, it didn't. And so what ended up happening is you had lots of young people going to university, but leaving with a lot of debt, not being able to find jobs afterwards or being able to find careers in their field of study. And at the same time, again, being expected to have 3 to 4 years of experience for an entry-level job. I also graduated in the era of unpaid internships, which have since become illegal. So the path back then was you would graduate, then you would work for free for a couple years, and then maybe you would get an entry-level job. But even today, we're seeing young people with the exact same struggles, graduating with huge amounts of debt, not being connected to the workforce after school. And not being equipped to contribute to the economy in the areas that there are skill gaps.